2025 is for trusting yourself, okay? Welcome to the podcast. Perhaps I have some points I want to make. I'm going to make 3 of them right now, and then I'm going to talk more about 2024, what I learned in 2024, some of my favorite things in 2024. And then at the end, I'm going to do an even bigger point. So tune in. My first point is that maybe this whole self thing isn't as stable and secure and permanent as you may think it is. I think more accurately, this could be titled 2025 is a year of trust, because trusting yourself is a little strange when you're always changing. That's something I've really learned over the past year. The self, whenever you're trying to find yourself, my true self, my real self, who am I? Who am I supposed to be? It's like that is always in a constant state of change. You are in a constant state of becoming. And there's no point where that stops, where you finally become the thing you think you're supposed to be. It keeps going and going. And then you die. But here's what's also wild. Like if you believe in an afterlife, then you keep going after that too. But even if you don't, your body keeps changing, transforming into something new through this process of decomposition and decay, transforming into the rest of the world, into new matter and new forms, building new life. And your memory of you also continues to change and transform and have an effect. And so there is no point where you stop becoming. Why is that important for trust? Because I think what we get afraid of is that I'm not who I'm supposed to be. I should be doing better. I would be doing better if I were to get my shit together. If I were to actually do all the things I think I'm supposed to do and finally be the person I'm supposed to be. It's like that holds us back so much and keeps us in fear so much. I think what's more freeing and more confidence building, as I'm thinking of all the ways that I would like to change, first acknowledge I am changing no matter what. Because I think we often feel really stuck too, of like, oh yeah, I'm just being lazy. I hate that word. It's not a legit thing. Shout out the author Devin Price. Yeah, laziness does not exist. That's a really good book. Check that out. But we get scared of like, oh, I'm just lazy, or I'm just like unmotivated. I'm not doing as much as the people around me. I'm just not changing and I want to change. But you are already always changing. You just have to pay attention. Perhaps a better question than how can I change is how am I already changing? What are the little ways that I'm already evolving? And maybe it's in a direction that you don't want. That's another good question. What direction am I changing in? Not how can I change, not what can I do to change, but rather what direction am I going? What direction am I changing into? Is that the direction I want to keep going? No? Then let's go over there. Or let's try doing something else. And we'll get more on that point too in a bit, on doing other things. But I think the big thing too in this conversation of trusting yourself is we get into the topic of self-love, which also is a little tricky, again, because there is no permanent, unchanging, stable, solid self. Some traditions may even say there's no self at all, or the only self that exists is one whole self that everyone in the world shares, that all creation shares. We're not going to get that deep into that conversation, but I think what we know for sure is that there is no stable, permanent, unchanging self. And so loving yourself, I think we need to refresh that conversation with this perspective as well. The self that you think you need to love is really you just clinging on to different characteristics of yourself and contracting them together and saying, this is the self that I need to love. And it's usually you identifying with things you've done or things you think about yourself or things other people have said about yourself, clinging on to them and saying, this is the self and I'm having a hard time loving it. When I think the beginning of that journey of love and loving yourself must begin with letting some of that go. Realizing I'm clinging on to way too much and identifying with way too much. But secondly, I think that the biggest hurdle to loving yourself through this gradual process of learning that is learning to love the part of yourself that has a hard time loving yourself. I think so many people, it's like that's the final big hurdle, right? I'm thinking of like that meme or that old comic of the guy going through the tunnel with a sickle going through the tunnel, almost to the treasure. And then he gives up at the end and walks away. But he only had to go a little bit more. I don't know if that's the best analogy, but I'm thinking of like something like that, of like, this is the big, final, hardest obstacle is right here before you're set free. I mean, of course, there's no moment where you're fully free. This is a thing we're always learning. But I think that's such a big one is, are you willing to love the part of yourself that doesn't love yourself, that has a hard time loving yourself? Are you willing to embrace that part of you? That's what I'm learning for sure, as I'm talking about 2025 being the year of trusting yourself. Is like, I am in a constant state of change. You, my friends, are in a constant state of change. You got to trust the process. Secondly, my second point, let's get a little bit more real. Capitalism doesn't want you to trust yourself. Capitalism would just like you to just keep trusting the process of profit. Endless production, endless consumption for endless profit. And if you find yourself failing in trying to make yourself fit into the capitalist scheme and trying to make a living by selling your labor and working really, 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 really hard, being told that if you just worked harder, you'll finally get what you need. If you fail in that journey, then capitalism will convince you to blame yourself again and again and again and again. There's nothing wrong with the system, they say. It's you. You're just not working hard enough. You just don't want it enough. You aren't putting in enough effort. They say if you were to just grind more, then you'll see that capitalism works. Then you'll see that there's actually nothing wrong with the system. And then people who do find some sort of success, even if it's small success, end up forgetting what got them there, how they were able to get it, the other people that are doing the same thing that aren't getting it. And they fool themselves into thinking like, oh yeah, I did what I was supposed to do and it worked. And let me keep going. But it's like, that's something that really keeps so many people with a small imagination about how the world can be and the ways that we can change it, is those little stories of hope. Well, so-and-so made it. So-and-so worked really hard. So you just have to work really hard. That's the kind of hope we need to get rid of. Hopelessness is helpful as a tool sometimes. Of course, I wouldn't say hopelessness in everything, but we need to give up hope in some specific areas. And I'm thinking of some of that language I'm getting from the book Embracing Hopelessness by Miguel de la Torre, which is also a great book. But it's kind of the same idea, where it's like we continue to fool ourselves into blaming ourselves and thinking I am the problem and I just need to work harder. And we need to give that up. Capitalism, like I said, doesn't want you to trust yourself and to just keep blaming yourself for everything. But there's another way. We need to see a whole revolution of values, of people realizing like, no, there's actually something wrong with this system. There actually can be a different way of living, of organizing ourselves, of structuring society and the economy. We should listen to those parts of ourselves that are really struggling with making it in this capitalist world, and listen to others who are really struggling to make it. Understand, no, we can do things differently. So that's another part of trusting yourself. Now, next point, you learn by doing. You learn by doing because your body leads you. It leads you. There's a lot of talk about mindset these days. There's even people who have the occupation of mindset coach, or the constant talk of like, you just need to shift your mindset, just change your mindset. And there's definitely validity to a lot of that. But when it's not paired with embodiment, then it's pretty much bullshit. It needs to include the whole self, the whole body, your entire existence. We need to be more holistic here, not just talk so much about minds and changing your mind and learning more to have different ideas in your head and convincing ourselves that is what will push us to make changes we want to make, is that I just need to learn more. I just need to read more. I just need to study more. Then I could put myself out there, and I just need to learn all the different ins and outs and perspectives on this political topic before I actually advocate for anything, before I actually speak up about any sort of struggle that people are going through. I need to learn everything about it. And until then, I need to be completely silent. That just keeps us stuck and silent. Or I need to learn everything about this certain skill or job that I want to get into before I try it, so that I don't embarrass myself, or so that I don't fail immediately or fail at all. If I can have all the right ideas in my head about it, then I won't fail. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. It's not how it really works. Learning, of course, is important. But again, we're talking about being holistic here. You need to also do. And you learn so much, maybe dare I say so much more, by actually just doing and learning on the way. Learning as you go. And that's something I'm really learning over this last year. And really what I'm learning through this podcast, to be honest, by doing this podcast. I was thinking about this podcast for a very long time before I started it. And there's a lot of different projects that I've been thinking about that I haven't started. And I'm working on a book right now that I've been kind of stuck on. It's been taking me way longer than I thought it would. And I find myself just getting stuck, overly researching, reading about this and that and this and that, thinking I need to know everything about it before I can write about it, or before I can, so that I could feel confident in doing it. But I keep coming back to again and again, you learn by doing. And mindset shifts alone may serve as a little boost at the time, but you'll find yourself realizing that it doesn't last again and again, because your body is what leads you. Like, you may be stuck in some of these patterns and habits that you're not pleased with, and you would like some sort of change in your life. And then you read about all the reasons why some of your bad habits are bad, and read all about the benefits of making some of the changes you want to make. And you're trying to get that solid understanding in your head so that you can have the motivation to change. And then what happens is you end up going back to what you used to do, because that's what your body is used to doing. Your body will always seek to protect you. And one of the ways it tries to protect you is by keeping you as stable as it can. And so you may be telling yourself in your mind, like, oh yeah, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to lock in, as they say today. But ultimately, your body will just go back to what it's used to keep itself safe. And so it's a process. It's a process of practice. Like I said, this has been something I've been learning for a while, but I'm still stuck in a lot of different areas. Like, I know all the right answers for getting unstuck on my book right now. I know all the right answer, all the tips and strategies and methods for getting unstuck and philosophy behind it. I could do a lot of podcasts. I could start a podcast just to talk about that, about creativity and getting unstuck and getting out of writer's block and everything, because I have all this information and knowledge and advice and wisdom in my head that I've learned to try to get myself unstuck. But ultimately, what's going to help me in the long run is practice. So I'm practicing, and it is helping. It's not as bad as it was like a year ago. And this podcast, the existence of this podcast, is one of those ways that I'm trying to practice. Not overthinking so much, not waiting so long until I feel confident enough to start doing something. Instead, it's like, no, let's just start this thing week by week. Let's just keep doing it, and you'll figure it out. And you don't have to know all the right answers for how to format this yet, how to promote this yet, how to make it work for yourself and for people listening yet. Just get started. We'll figure it out on the way. That's been the spirit of this podcast. I was also unsure about this episode, because leading up to me recording this today, it was the Thursday, the day before this podcast comes out. I really wasn't sure what I wanted to talk about. And so I was getting scared and feeling like maybe I should skip this week. But then I'm like, nah, you gotta put this stuff into practice. Just go with it. And then I thought about it more. I realized oh yeah, I know what to talk about. So you learn by doing, friends.